The crystal chandeliers of Seoul's Grand Palace Hotel glittered like stars above the most exclusive gathering in Korea. 5 tables arranged in a perfect circle, draped in crimson silk. White orchids imported from Thailand. Security men with bulging jackets positioned at every exit. It was the 5th wedding anniversary celebration of Jin-ho Park, the undisputed king of the Gyeongseong Syndicate, and his wife Sophia. Jin-ho Park sat at the center table, a glass of 30-year-old scotch between his manicured fingers. At 45, he carried himself with the cold confidence of a man who had ordered executions over breakfast. Tailored Brioni suit, platinum watch, not a single silver hair out of place. His eyes constantly swept the room, calculating, measuring, judging. He had built his empire from the streets, transforming a neighborhood protection racket into a multinational operation that controlled everything from gambling to shipping routes across Southeast Asia. Beside him sat Sophia Park, 32 years old with the kind of beauty that made people forget to breathe. Italian-Korean heritage evident in her olive skin and almond eyes. Black dress cut with architectural precision, diamond earrings catching the light with every slight movement of her head. Her smile was practiced perfection, neither too wide nor too forced. For 5 years, she had been the silent, elegant partner, the beautiful accessory that enhanced Jin-ho's image of success. She poured his drinks at business meetings. She entertained the wives of his associates. She appeared and disappeared exactly when expected. Tonight was their anniversary, but there was no love in Jin-ho's eyes when he looked at his wife. Only possession, ownership, and increasingly disappointment. A toast, called out Kang Min-ho, Jin-ho's right-hand man, rising from his seat at the adjacent table. To our great leader and his beautiful wife. 5 years of prosperity and strength. Glasses raised across the room. Jin-ho nodded in acknowledgement, his smile not reaching his eyes. Sophia inclined her head gracefully, her expression giving away nothing. At the far end of the room sat Vincenzo Ricci, a 70-year-old Sicilian with a face like weathered leather and eyes that had seen too much. He was the consigliere sent by the Sicilian families to maintain relations with their Korean partners. He watched the couple with unusual intensity, his gnarled fingers tapping against his cane. Jin-ho stood, raising his glass higher. Thank you for joining us tonight. 5 years ago I made a strategic alliance. He glanced down at Sophia. A beautiful alliance. Polite laughter rippled across the tables. But alliances must bear fruit, must they not? Jin-ho continued in Korean. His voice carried an edge that made several guests shift uncomfortably. Sophia's expression remained unchanged, though something flickered in her eyes. A momentary tensing of her shoulders. Then gone. Jin-ho's smile widened as he switched languages, his words now flowing in Sicilian. The syllables rolled expertly from his tongue. He had studied the language for his business dealings, a fact he took immense pride in. You are nothing but an empty vessel, he said in Sicilian, looking directly at Sophia while addressing the room. 5 years of marriage and not even the shadow of a child. What good is a garden that bears no fruit? Several of the Korean men who understood basic Sicilian chuckled uncomfortably. Most looked confused. The few Sicilians present stiffened, their eyes darting between husband and wife. Vincenzo Ricci's knuckles whitened around his cane. Jin-ho continued in Sicilian, his voice carrying the pretense of joviality while his words cut like knives. Perhaps I should have selected a younger wife. One not so concerned with maintaining her figure that she denies me an heir. He raised his glass higher. To my beautiful barren wife. May she eventually fulfill her only purpose. The silence in the room was absolute. Even those who didn't understand the language sensed the malice beneath the words. Sophia's face remained a perfect mask. She sat with the poise of a queen, hands folded in her lap, eyes forward. Years of practice had taught her how to hide every emotion. But inside, something ancient and powerful was stirring. And then she rose. The movement was so graceful, so unexpected, that every eye in the room followed her. She took the crystal glass from Jinho's hand, a wife serving her husband, a gesture she had performed countless times. But instead of filling it, she placed it gently on the table. When she finally spoke, it wasn't in Korean. Her Sicilian flowed with the native accent of Palermo's oldest families, each word pronounced with an authenticity that Jinho's studied fluency couldn't match. Perhaps, husband, before questioning my fertility, you should explain why your medical report from Dr. Kim shows your sperm count is 0. Her voice carried through the silent room, melodic and precise. She smiled sweetly, switching to Korean. Or shall I continue sharing your secrets in both languages? Jinho's face froze, the confident smile evaporating like water on hot stone. For 3 seconds, the longest 3 seconds of his life, he couldn't move, couldn't speak. Then rage flooded his features. What did you say to me? He hissed in Korean, his hand twitching toward her. Sophia didn't flinch. She replied in Sicilian again, her voice carrying to every corner of the suddenly silent room. I said you are shooting blanks, Jinho. The reason we have no children is you, not me. I've known for 3 years since I saw the medical report you tried to hide. She turned to face the room, her posture regal. My husband has lied to all of you. He has lied to his partners. He has lied to himself. She looked at the Sicilian contingent. And he has insulted the daughter of Salvatore Catalano by treating her like a decorative doll. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Salvatore Catalano was not just any Sicilian. He was one of the 5 capo di tutti capi, boss of bosses, who controlled the Mediterranean trade routes. A man whose name was whispered even among the most hardened criminals. Vincenzo Ricci slowly stood, leaning on his cane. Piccola Sophia, he said, his voice cracking with emotion. We wondered when you would reveal yourself. Jinho's eyes widened, darting between his wife and the old Sicilian. What is this? He demanded, his voice rising. What game are you playing? Sophia turned to her husband, something dangerous now visible behind her perfect composure. No game, Jinho. Just truth. The truth you've been too arrogant to see for 5 years. She walked around the table, and every man in the room, killers, enforcers, crime lords, unconsciously straightened in her presence. Did you really believe my father would send his only daughter to marry a foreign partner without protection? Without purpose? Sophia asked, her voice carrying that distinctive Catalano authority that made even hardened criminals pay attention. Did you think I was just a pretty face? A bargaining chip with no value beyond my appearance? Jinho's hand moved to the inside of his jacket where his gun was holstered. 2 of his bodyguards stepped forward. I wouldn't, Sophia said calmly. She nodded toward Vincenzo, who tapped his cane twice on the marble floor. 4 of the waitstaff suddenly stood differently, their subservient postures transforming into something more dangerous. Their hands moved to concealed weapons. My father's men have been serving you drinks for 5 years, Jinho, Sophia said. They've heard every plan, every betrayal, every insult. Tonight, they hear you shame his daughter. Jinho's face contorted with rage. You think you can threaten me? In my city? In front of my men? He snapped his fingers and his bodyguards drew their weapons. But no one else moved. His lieutenants, his captains, his loyal soldiers, all remained seated, watching the drama unfold with calculation in their eyes. Power was shifting in real time, and everyone in the room could feel it. Sophia walked to Vincenzo, who took her hand and kissed it with reverence. Tell them, she said to the old man. Vincenzo nodded, turning to face the room. Sophia Catalano Park is not merely Salvatore's daughter. She is his heir. The negotiator who brokered peace between the 5 families when she was just 24. The strategist who expanded our operations into Eastern Europe without a single shot fired. He looked at Jinho with undisguised contempt. And for 5 years, she has honored the alliance by playing the role of your submissive wife, while you squandered the opportunities her father offered. Jinho's face had turned ashen. The gun in his bodyguard's hand wavered uncertainly. Sophia walked back to her husband, stopping just beyond his reach. I agreed to this marriage because my father respected your business acumen. He thought our partnership could control the Pacific routes. But instead of building our alliance, you've been siphoning profits, double-crossing my family's shipments, and making side deals with the Vietnamese. Jin Ho's eyes widened further. Those negotiations had been conducted in absolute secrecy. How could you possibly? I installed the listening devices in your office myself, Sophia interrupted. On our wedding night, while you were passed out drunk, celebrating your acquisition of a trophy wife. A low murmur spread through the room. Several of Jin Ho's captains exchanged glances. Kong Min Ho, Jin Ho's right-hand man, slowly stood. Jin Ho, is this true? Have you betrayed our Sicilian partners? Jin Ho turned on him furiously. Sit down. You question me? After everything I've given you. But Kong remained standing. You've taught us that respect must be earned and maintained. If you've compromised our position with the Catalanos. Jin Ho pulled his own gun, pointing it at Sophia. Enough. This woman is manipulating you all. She's twisted my private medical issues into some conspiracy. Sophia didn't even blink at the weapon aimed at her heart. Your men deserve to know the truth. About your betrayals. About your lies. About the real reason you've been so desperate to shame me about children. She reached into her clutch and removed a folded document. This is your medical report from 3 years ago. Dr. Kim diagnosed you with azoospermia, 0 sperm count. A condition likely caused by the untreated mumps you suffered as a teenager. Jin Ho lunged forward, grabbing for the paper, but Sophia stepped back smoothly. Copies have already been distributed to every captain in this room. As if on cue, phones began buzzing. Jin Ho watched in horror as his men checked their devices, their expressions changing as they viewed the evidence. You had me followed to fertility clinics, Sophia continued. You spread rumors about my deficiencies. You made me endure painful, unnecessary treatments, knowing all along that you were the issue. All to protect your ego, your image of virility. Jin Ho's gun hand trembled with rage. You think this changes anything? I built this organization from nothing. These men are loyal to me, not to some foreign woman. He turned to his assembled captains. Are you going to let a woman dictate terms to you? A Sicilian whore? The silence that followed was damning. Kong Min Ho looked at his boss of 15 years with new eyes. The alliance with Sicily has tripled our profits. Jin Ho. If you've been undermining that for your personal gain. Jin Ho fired a shot into the ceiling, the sound deafening in the enclosed space. I am still in charge here. But when he turned back, he found himself facing not just Sophia, but Vincenzo, who had moved with surprising speed for his age to stand beside her. Salvatore Catalano has revoked the marriage agreement, the old Sicilian announced formally. The alliance between our families is dissolved not with the Korean organization, but with Jin Ho Park specifically. He looked around the room. Sophia has been authorized to negotiate new terms with whomever the Gyeongseong syndicate selects as their new leader. Jin Ho laughed, a harsh, desperate sound. You think my men will betray me for a promise of profit? These are loyal soldiers, men who have killed for me, bled for me, men who have made less money than they should because you've been skimming from both sides. Sophia replied calmly. She turned to the assembled captains. The books don't lie, gentlemen. Check the offshore accounts in Macau. More phones were pulled out. More damning evidence examined. The room temperature seemed to drop with each passing second. Jin Ho's gun swung wildly between Sophia and his men. This is insanity. I built this empire. I am the Gyeongseong syndicate. Sophia shook her head. No, Jin Ho. You're just a man with a gun and fewer friends by the second. She took a deliberate step toward him, her eyes never leaving his. 5 years. I've been the perfect wife. Silent, obedient, decorative. I poured your drinks, laughed at your jokes, endured your public humiliation. I watched you build business relationships on my father's reputation while treating me like property. Another step closer. But I was never just your wife, Jin Ho. I was always a Catalano first. Jinho's finger tightened on the trigger. The entire room held its breath. And then a new voice broke the tension. "Boss, don't do this." It was Sung-min, Jinho's personal bodyguard of 10 years. A man who had executed dozens on Jinho's orders without question. Jinho's eyes flashed with betrayal. "You dare speak against me?" Sung-min's face remained impassive. "I've protected you for a decade. That includes protecting you from yourself." He nodded toward the documents being passed among the captains. "If these allegations are true, firing that gun only ends one way. For all of us." Jinho's hand trembled, the barrel of the gun wavering between Sophia and his former loyal guard. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the room's careful climate control. For the first time in 15 years, Jinho Park tasted fear, metallic and bitter at the back of his throat. "This is how loyalty dies," he spat. "For money. For opportunity." "No," Sophia said quietly. "This is how loyalty was never earned. Real loyalty isn't bought with fear or intimidation. It's built on respect and honesty, qualities you've never understood." She glanced at the assembled captains, making eye contact with each one. "I've spent 5 years learning your organization from within. I know who schemes from collections. I know who has been loyal despite temptation. I know who has family in need and who has ambitions beyond their station." Her words landed like perfectly placed chess pieces. Several men shifted uncomfortably, while others straightened with pride. "You've been watching us?" Kang Minho asked, his voice a mixture of outrage and admiration. "I've been evaluating potential partners," Sophia corrected. "My father doesn't dissolve alliances lightly. Korea remains strategically valuable." Jinho laughed bitterly. "So that's the game. Replace me and continue business. You think it's that simple?" "Nothing about this has been simple," Sophia replied, something vulnerable finally showing through her composed exterior. "Do you know what it costs to sit silently while being demeaned? To smile when your husband discusses your body as if you're breeding stock? To endure fertility treatments you know are pointless just to maintain a cover?" For the first time, the room saw something beyond the perfect mask, a glimpse of the pain beneath her performance. It lasted only seconds before the composure returned, but it affected everyone who witnessed it. Even Jinho faltered, the gun lowering slightly. Vincenzo stepped forward. Sophia was 19 when she first translated negotiations between her father and the Camorra. At 22, she personally negotiated the Montenegro shipping rights that tripled our European revenue. By 24, she had the respect of every capo in Sicily. The old man's eyes narrowed. Then she was sent here, not as a bride but as our most skilled diplomat. Her marriage was meant to be a partnership between equals. Jinho's face contorted. "You expect me to believe Salvatore Catalano sent his precious heir to be a wife in a foreign country? That makes no sense." "It was my choice," Sophia said simply. The room fell silent, waiting for her to continue. "The alliance needed a personal connection to succeed. I volunteered because I saw potential in your operation. Your ambition reminded me of my father in his early days." Her eyes met Jinho's directly. "I actually admired you once." Something shifted in Jinho's expression, confusion bleeding through the anger. "The first year, I truly tried to be just your wife," Sophia continued. "I thought perhaps we could build something genuine, a true merging of our families through respect, possibly even affection." Her voice hardened. "Then I found the medical report. I watched you burn it, then come to our bed and blame me for our childlessness. That night, I stopped being your wife in anything but name." Jinho's gun hand dropped further. "If you knew, why stay silent for 3 more years? Because my loyalty to my family's business interests outweighed my personal humiliation," Sophia answered. "Until you decided to make that humiliation public." She gestured around the room. "You chose to shame me in front of our associates. In Sicilian, no less the language of my blood. That was your final mistake." Jinho's eyes darted around the room, seeing his empire crumbling before him. His most trusted captains were already positioning themselves towards Sophia, like flowers turning to the sun. In a final, desperate move, he raised the gun again, but this time he pressed it to his own temple. You think you can take everything I've built? I'll die before I watch another claim my legacy. Sophia's expression didn't change. That's your choice, Jin-ho. One last selfish act to avoid consequences. Her calmness seemed to unnerve him more than fear would have. The gun trembled against his temple. You never loved me, he accused, his voice breaking slightly. This was always a game to you. No, Jin-ho. It was always business. You're the one who confused the two. Sophia took one final step toward him, now close enough that the scent of her perfume, jasmine and sandalwood, reached him. And you're the one who made it personal with your cruelty. For a long moment, the entire room balanced on a knife's edge. Jin-ho's finger tightened on the trigger, his eyes wild with cornered rage. Then, with a broken sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob, he lowered the gun. Take it, he said, offering the weapon to Sung-min. It's over. As the bodyguard secured the gun, the tension in the room shifted. Not disappeared, these were still dangerous men in a dangerous business, but transformed into something new. Anticipation, calculation, opportunity. Sophia turned to face the assembled captains, her posture once again regal, controlled. Gentlemen, this organization stands at a crossroads. The Catalano family is prepared to continue our mutually beneficial relationship under new leadership. She nodded to Kang Min-ho. I believe succession protocols are clearly established. The right-hand man looked at Jin-ho, who sat slumped in his chair, defeat etched into every line of his face. 15 years of loyalty read with self-preservation in Kang's expression. Business 1. The captains will vote, Kang confirmed. Until then, Jin-ho remains under house guard for his protection. Everyone understood what protection meant in this context. Jin-ho didn't resist as two guards approached to escort him from the room. As he passed Sophia, he paused. Was any of it real? He asked quietly. Any moment in 5 years? Sophia met his gaze steadily. I wanted it to be. That's the truth. Jin-ho nodded once, the last gesture of a defeated king acknowledging checkmate. Then he was gone, escorted from his own anniversary celebration by men who had pledged him their lives just hours before. The room erupted into controlled chaos. Captains formed immediate alliances. Phones appeared. Hushed conversations in Korean filled the air. The game of succession had begun. Sophia watched it unfold with practiced neutrality, though exhaustion pulled at the corners of her eyes. Only Vincenzo noticed her hands trembling slightly. Come, the old man said gently. You've done enough for tonight. My men will watch the proceedings. He guided her to a private alcove off the main banquet hall, away from the political maneuvering. A security detail materialized, creating a respectful perimeter around them. Once seated, Sophia finally allowed herself a moment of vulnerability, closing her eyes and exhaling slowly. You played your part perfectly, Piccola, Vincenzo said, pouring her a glass of water. Your father will be proud. Sophia opened her eyes. I'm not sure pride is what I feel right now, Vincenzo. The old man's weathered face softened. No one enjoys destroying a man, no matter how deserving. I didn't destroy him. His choices did. She sipped the water. He could have been a true partner. We could have built something extraordinary together. Vincenzo nodded sympathetically. The marriage was always strategic, but you hoped for more. Foolishly, Sophia acknowledged. When father proposed the alliance, I saw potential beyond business. Jin-ho was brilliant, ambitious, driven. A sad smile crossed her face. I thought perhaps we were similar enough to build understanding, even if love wasn't part of the equation. She placed the glass down carefully. Instead, I became his possession, a status symbol. The beautiful, silent wife who enhanced his image while he conducted affairs with at least 7 different women. Vincenzo's eyebrows rose. You knew about those too? Of course. That wasn't what broke the marriage, though. Her voice hardened. It was the lies about children, using my supposed barrenness to shame me while knowing he was the infertile one. Sophia looked away, her profile sharp against the dim lighting. He took me to specialists, made me undergo painful procedures. All while knowing the truth. A subtle knock interrupted them. Dr. Kim, a slim man in his 50s with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, entered the alcove. "You asked to see me after everything unfolded?" he said, bowing slightly to Sophia. "Thank you for coming, doctor." Sophia gestured for him to sit. "I wanted to thank you personally for your discretion these past years." Dr. Kim nodded gravely. "Medical ethics are not negotiable, Mrs. Park. Even when pressured by someone of your husband's influence. Yet you helped me access his medical records," Sophia noted. "That falls outside typical ethics." The doctor's expression remained dignified. When a patient is being actively harmed by medical deception, sometimes broader ethics must prevail over technical rules. He glanced at Vincenzo, then back to Sophia. "Besides, I suspected you had resources beyond a typical wronged wife. Your questions were too precise, your understanding of medical terminology too sophisticated." Sophia smiled, a genuine smile that transformed her face, making her appear younger, almost girlish. "You risked much to help me, doctor. I won't forget that. May I ask a personal question?" Dr. Kim ventured. "You've earned that right. The fertility treatments you underwent, they were unnecessary, as you knew. Yet you continued them for 3 years. Why endure that pain?" Sophia's expression grew contemplative. "Partly to maintain my cover. But mostly," she hesitated, "mostly because I needed to be certain no child would ever come from this union." Understanding dawned on the doctor's face. "You were protecting potential children from being born into this situation." "I was raised in a world of power and violence, doctor. My childhood was complicated." Sophia's gaze grew distant. "I attended my first funeral at 6. My father's enemies tried to kidnap me 3 times before I was 15. I learned to use a gun before I learned algebra." She looked directly at Dr. Kim. "I promised myself that if I ever had children, they would know safety and love without condition. They would never become pawns in power games between criminal empires." A single tear escaped, tracking down her perfect cheek. "Jin-ho would have used any child as leverage against me, against my father, against his enemies. I couldn't allow that." Dr. Kim nodded solemnly. "That's perhaps the most maternal choice possible, to protect children by not bringing them into harm's way. A cold comfort, but thank you." Sophia composed herself quickly. "Now, I believe I've kept you long enough. Your service to the truth won't be forgotten." After the doctor departed, Vincenzo placed a gnarled hand over Sophia's. "Your father never wanted this for you, you know. When you volunteered for this assignment, he argued against it for weeks." "I know, but I was stubborn." "Like him," Vincenzo chuckled. "Salvatore wanted you to run operations from Sicily, not infiltrate from within. And I chose differently," Sophia said firmly, "because real power requires sacrifice." She stood, smoothing her dress with practiced precision. "Now, shall we see who the captains have selected as their new leader? We have a partnership to renegotiate." "They'll choose Kong," Vincenzo said confidently. "He's the obvious successor." Sophia smiled enigmatically. "Perhaps, but Song Jae-woo has more street support and better connections with the Chinese triads. And Kim Dae-young controls the gambling operations that generate 40% of their legitimate revenue." Vincenzo laughed. "You truly have been paying attention these 5 years." "I've never stopped being my father's daughter," Sophia replied. "Not for a single moment." They returned to the main hall, where the atmosphere had shifted from chaos to organized purpose. The captains stood in a loose semicircle, with Kang Min-ho at the center. He approached Sophia with a new deference. "The Leadership Council has reached a decision. I will serve as interim chairman while we restructure certain aspects of our organization." Sophia nodded. "A wise choice. And Jin-ho. He will be permitted to retire to a private residence outside Seoul. With supervision, of course. The subtext was clear: house arrest for life if he behaved. A bullet if he didn't. The Catalano family acknowledges your succession, Sophia stated formally. We look forward to discussing our continued partnership. Kong bowed slightly. Perhaps you would honor us by serving as our primary liaison with the Sicilian families? Your unique understanding of both organizations would be invaluable. It was a peace offering, but also a recognition of her newly revealed power. I would be pleased to facilitate that relationship, Sophia agreed, though my primary residence will be returning to Sicily within the month. Relief and disappointment mingled in Kang's expression. Glad to have her support. Sorry to lose her influence. Of course. And your personal status. As of tonight, I am Sophia Catalano again, she said firmly. The marriage is dissolved. 1 year later, Sicily gleamed under the Mediterranean sun. The ancient city of Palermo, a maze of history and secrets. In a private courtyard hidden behind high stone walls, Sophia Catalano sat reviewing financial reports, her hair loose around her shoulders, her clothing casual yet elegant. A soft knock preceded Vincenzo's entrance. The meeting with the Korean delegation went well. Kong Min-ho sends his regards. Sophia smiled. And the new shipping route? Approved unanimously. Your father is pleased. She set down the reports. And our other matter? Vincenzo's weathered face softened. The foundation has secured the building. The children's shelter will open next month in Seoul. This news brought a different kind of smile to Sophia's face. Something warmer, more personal than her business expression. 40 beds, full educational facilities, medical care, and psychological support, Vincenzo continued. All funded anonymously through the offshore accounts we recovered from Jin-ho's private holdings. Poetic justice, Sophia murmured. The money he hoarded will now protect children from families like ours. She stood, walking to the balcony overlooking the sea. Has there been any word about Jin-ho? Still under house arrest outside Seoul. He drinks too much, they say. Talks to ghosts. Sophia nodded, unsurprised. And the medical program for the fertility clinic? Fully funded. 10 low-income couples have already begun treatment. She turned back to face the old consigliera. Good. That completes my personal business in Korea. Vincenzo studied her thoughtfully. You know, your father plans to announce your official position next week. Head of International Operations. The first woman to hold such power in our family's history. I'm aware, Sophia replied calmly. Yet you spend more time on these personal projects. The Children's Foundation, the fertility clinic, the women's shelter in Bangkok. Sophia's gaze was steady. Because power without purpose is just vanity, Vincenzo. I learned that watching Jin-ho destroy himself. She looked out again at the sea stretching toward horizons beyond imagination. 5 years in a gilded cage taught me that true power isn't found in making people fear you. It's found in changing the world that created the fear in the first place. Vincenzo nodded slowly. You went to Korea as your father's daughter and returned as your own woman. Perhaps that was always the point of the journey, Sophia said softly. As the Mediterranean breeze carried the scent of lemon trees and salt water through the ancient courtyard, Sophia Catalano closed her eyes. For the first time in years, she felt neither like an heiress nor a wife, but simply herself, a woman who had walked through fire and emerged not just unburned, but illuminated. The silence and legacy of powerful women often speak louder than the boastful words of powerful men. In reclaiming her voice, Sophia hadn't just left a room speechless. She had changed the conversation entirely.